Society is changing faster than ever, and social media has become its most merciless mirror. There, the days of perfect photos and sweet, polished words are gone. What was once hidden behind the masks of feminism, healing, or free love is now laid bare. The raw essence of a generation of women who no longer know who they truly are. They flaunt their wounds, turn pain into content, transform demands into standards, and expect men to heal them as if it were an unquestionable duty. But what lies behind those bright lights? It is emotional debt, wounds never processed, only painted over and wrapped in hashtags. This video doesn't aim to attack anyone. It simply sheds light on a truth that many dare not face. For when the mask falls, what remains are the raw instincts, the real pain, and the tangible consequences. And if you think you already understand the modern woman, watch until the end, because you may realize that everything we once believed about love has changed. The world once believed women were enigmas, gentle, deep, unpredictable, and full of mystery. But then social media arrived, and everything once hidden began to crack open. No paparazzi, no scandals. Women themselves have unmasked their own lives. Every word, every video, every confession, uploaded in exchange for a few likes, a few compliments, a few moments of attention in an endless sea of people. And within that intoxicating illusion, the mask began to slip. Once, society painted women as symbols of sacrifice, virtue, and grace. But on a TikTok, Instagram, or Twitter, we now see a new generation. Those who believe they're living authentically, yet fail to see that the truth they flaunt is precisely what exposes their deepest wounds, chaos and disorientation. They tell stories of betrayal as if they were triumphs. They boast their body count as though it were a badge of honor. They speak of deserving unconditional love without realizing they've never learned how to love with responsibility. What's frightening is not that they've changed, but that they no longer know how they're changing. When complaints become contumative, when pain becomes a clip, and tragedy is dressed up with the hashtag self-love, the line between genuine healing and self-deception dissolves. And so, social media, once seen as a tool for self-expression, has become a massive stage where everyone performs the role of the victim of their past, seeking empathy from others who are just as wounded. On a deeper level, this isn't just a personal issue, it's a cultural phenomenon. Values once cherished, dignity, discretion, gratitude, are being replaced by a culture of flaunting pain, flaunting wounds, flaunting misery. And while they believe they're being liberated, in truth, they're plunging themselves into an endless spiral of emotional dependence and validation seeking. The more they share, the deeper they sink into the addiction to attention, a craving with no cure. Behind the glittering glow of virtual feminism lies a stark truth. Many are using social media not to heal, but to beg for forgiveness. They no longer seek to understand themselves. They seek to be understood, to be pitied. They no longer crave respect. They crave attention. And in that process, their true essence, the shadows, the wounds, the selfishness, is exposed to the world without anyone forcing them to do so. This is the moment the mask falls. An era where truth no longer lives in words, but in the actions they unknowingly post. When every confession becomes public, when every wound becomes content, we no longer have to guess. They've already told us everything. Social media doesn't make women worse. It magnifies what was always there. It amplifies the truths once hidden beneath politeness and social conventions until they can no longer be denied. And from here begins the story of emotional debt, of demand and disconnection, a quiet wave reshaping our entire understanding of love, responsibility, and human value in the digital age. If pain leaves scars, then emotional debt is the unpaid loan that lingers long after love has ended. It cannot be seen or measured, yet it weighs heavily enough to drown an entire new relationship. And the most dangerous part is this: most people who carry it have no idea whom they owe, or who they're forcing to pay in their place. In the original video, Alan Watts describes emotional debt as an accumulation of unresolved relationships. Each betrayal, each fleeting romance, each moment of being left behind adds another invisible charge to the balance. Instead of processing it, people carry it like luggage, dragging it from one man to another. And then, when they finally meet a good man, they lay every unpaid invoice from the past upon his table. The new man suddenly becomes the savior. He must understand, empathize, heal, and prove that he is different from those who came before. He is not merely loving a woman. He is loving her past, her pain, and the ghosts of old lovers still lingering in her soul. And that is when love turns into obligation, and connection becomes atonement. Alan Watts calls this emotional taxation without representation, a form of emotional tax imposed without the right to speak. In this world, men are not allowed to question, to grow weary, or to ask for fairness. If he falters, he is immediately branded as weak, impatient, or too shallow to love a wounded woman. But the truth is this: love is not charity. No one can heal another who refuses to heal themselves. And so, emotional debt never disappears. It simply transfers from one person to another, creating an endless cycle of borrowing, paying, resenting, and hurting. The problem lies here. Many women treat emotional debt as a privilege, not a responsibility. They believe that because they've been hurt, they deserve to be loved more, to be treated better. But love is not a reward for suffering. It is the fruit of growth. When pain becomes a bargaining chip, healing stops, and manipulation begins. They start using emotion as currency, trading guilt for affection, sympathy for validation. And so the debt grows. Each heartbreak adds another loan, of patience bent, of kindness, of understanding. Until one day, no man has the strength left to pay. That's when they look into the mirror and face the cruelest truth. Everyone has left, but the one thing that never did was the pain itself. Emotional debt doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's the result of a culture that glorifies pain. In a world that worships the victim, people forget that suffering doesn't make you deeper. It only makes you tired. And if you never learn to settle your own emotional accounts, every future relationship becomes just another stage of mutual punishment. Because love cannot exist between two debtors. Someone must pause, look at their own emotional ledger, and say, "It's time I pay my share." That is the true beginning of healing. There's a bitter truth quietly unfolding within the modern generation. People are learning how to sleep together before they ever learn how to love. And women, once symbols of emotion, of tenderness, of connection, have become the greatest casualties of the very sexual revolution they once believed would set them free. In the video, Alan Watts compares the sexual marketplace to a virtual economy where bodies are treated as currency and emotions are merely the bonus reward. In their youth, women possess the most precious asset, their allure, and they spend it lavishly. Fleeting affairs, intoxicating nights, hollow promises dressed as passion. Each time they believe they are free, authentic, victorious over judgment. But in truth, they are exchanging real connection for temporary pleasure. When everything becomes easy, sex, attention, flirtation, the meaning of love begins to dissolve. What was once a bridge between souls becomes a tool for self-validation. People no longer build trust, they chase chemistry. They no longer seek understanding, they seek what? And each encounter leaves a small cut. Through dozens of such cuts, the heart gradually loses its ability to feel. Alan Watts calls this a generation emotionally bankrupt, people who have spent all their emotional capital in their youth. By the time they wish to build something real, their account is empty. They reach their 30s with weary eyes, carrying the memories of countless fleeting lovers, yet no longer having the strength to trust or to give genuine love again. The irony is, they still believe they're searching for love. But what they call love is really redemption, a longing for someone to appear and make the pain worthwhile, to prove that all the heartbreaks of the past had meaning. They don't love the person in front of them. They love the feeling of being chosen again, of being validated. And that's why, even in a new relationship, they are lonelier than ever. Alan Watts emphasizes they mistake pleasure for connection, attention for love, and nightly texts for genuine care. When these virtual signals replace authentic communication, emotional connection collapses. Real conversations are replaced by stories. Real affection is replaced by heart emojis. Human emotion shrinks into 15-second clips, long enough to impress, but never enough to understand. And then, as time passes, they realize they've given too much to those who never stayed, leaving nothing whole for the ones who truly deserve it. The body may be easily shared, but the heart is not. Each wrong love erodes their ability to trust. Each betrayal adds another layer of armor. Until one day, they meet someone kind and genuine. But by then, they've become too numb to love. That is the tragedy of our time. Everyone longs for connection, yet everyone fears being hurt. Everyone seeks love, yet chooses the fastest path to lose it. And when sex becomes the dominant language, love becomes the faintest whisper. This isn't just the collapse of a generation. It's the collapse of what it means to truly connect in the digital age. After losing the ability to connect authentically, many modern women enter a new stage. They crown themselves permanent victims of love. They no longer say, "I was wrong," but instead, "I was hurt." They no longer ask, "How can I grow?" but, "Why didn't you love me the right way?" And that, as Alan Watts explains, is when victim culture becomes a shield for irresponsibility and a doubted self-respect. In this world, every wrongdoing can be justified by the past. Betrayal because they were betrayed, coldness because they were hurt, manipulation because they fear loss. They feel no need to change because society, especially social media, keeps reaffirming, "You're not wrong, you're just healing." From this, a dangerous sense of entitlement is born. If I have suffered, I deserve more love, more forgiveness, more indulgence. But love is not compensation. It is not born from pity. When one enters a relationship with the mindset, "You must make it up to me," love immediately loses balance. One gives, the other demands. One takes responsibility, the other waits to be saved. That is no longer love. It is an emotional transaction. The paradox is that they call this standards. And they say, "I need a man who can heal me," or "I deserve someone who can handle my worst self." Yet behind those seemingly powerful words hides a quiet fear. that if they stop demanding, they'll have nothing left to be loved for. They fail to realize that asking someone to endure your worst version is not strength. It is selfishness, disguised as personal freedom. Alan Watts calls this the language of responsibility avoidance, where everything dark is renamed to sound noble. Bitterness becomes boundaries. Distrust becomes intuition. Wounds become experience. Irresponsibility becomes freedom. Every time a woman says, "I just want you to accept me as I am," there's often another message underneath. "I don't want to change, but you must change enough to tolerate me." And that is the root of emotional manipulation, the act of turning another person's feelings into tools for preserving one's role as the untouchable victim. On social media, we see them display their pain like medals and share their tragedies like trophies. They speak of healing, but they're not truly healing. They've simply learned to articulate their pain more eloquently. What they're chasing isn't peace, it's attention. And when that attention comes from thousands of strangers, there's no motivation left to look inward. So while men struggle to understand, to empathize, to stay, these women continue performing the role of the victim, the role that keeps them loved, forgiven, and seen. But the truth is, no one can love forever a person who insists on being a victim. Because love cannot exist in an environment built on guilt and demand. It only blossoms when both take responsibility for their own hearts. And when responsibility is replaced by demand, when pain is glorified over growth, love no longer becomes a journey taken together, but a one-sided mental torment. This is the moment when emotional debt begins to multiply, and the true tragedy of modern relationships begins. The scales in the emotional game are finally tipping. For many years, men have been forced into the role of the healer, but now they are waking up. They realize they've been playing a game where the only reward for kindness is exhaustion. Those who once stayed to prove love now feel empty, realizing they were loving not a woman, but a collection of past wounds, pain, and expectations. In the video, Alan Watts calls them the cleanup crew, the emotional garbage collectors. They are the kind, responsible ones who believe that with enough love and patience, they can help a woman change. But soon, they understand a brutal truth. You cannot heal someone who still wants to play the victim. Every time they try to comfort her, she digs up her pain. Every time they try to renew the love, she brings up the past to punish them. And so the man gets stuck in an emotional whirlpool. Love becomes an obligation. Patience becomes a punishment. But eventually, all endurance has its limits. A new generation of men is rising, refusing to shoulder emotional debt they did not cause. They understand that love does not mean healing, and understanding does not mean unconditional suffering. They begin setting reverse standards, a concept once considered cold, but now a declaration of clarity. These standards may sound harsh. If she talks about her ex every day, disqualified. If she uses pain as a weapon to manipulate, disqualified. If she seeks validation from social media, disqualified. If she has not learned to take responsibility for her emotions, disqualified. Alan Watts does not encourage men to be cold. He encourages them to choose consciously. For when you know your worth, you do not pay for someone else's mistakes. When you choose peace over chaos, you are protecting your own soul. What's significant is that this rebellion does not stem from hatred, but from exhaustion. The men who were once called cold, impatient, afraid of commitment, now realize they don't fear love. They fear being exploited by those who are not ready to love genuinely. And so they withdraw. No fanfare, no argument. They simply refuse to play the game anymore. From here, the era of male standards begins. Men no longer have to prove they are good by enduring the emotional chaos of others. They start choosing women who take responsibility, who know how to heal themselves, who are ready to build together rather than demand salvation. And that is not selfishness, it is a form of intelligent love. Because true love does not need a savior. It needs two people who have survived their own lives and are ready to walk forward together. Men don't want to be therapists. They don't want to be the one who compensates. They just want to be companions. And if that's seen as cold, then perhaps the world has forgotten what it means to be a man who knows how to protect himself. These emotional debts don't just remain within the confines of love between two people. They spill out like oil, soaking into families, societies, and the generations that follow. When women with unresolved pain become mothers, and men with emotional exhaustion become fathers, a new emotional cycle is born. A cycle where children grow up amid coldness, skepticism, and preconceived notions about gender, love, and self-worth. Alan Watts calls this the toxic emotional inheritance, something passed down not through genes, but through words, attitudes, and daily behaviors. A mother filled with bitterness teaches her daughter, "Never trust men. Be stronger so you won't be hurt. Love yourself more than anyone else." What she doesn't realize is that while teaching her daughter to be strong, she's also passing on a fear of love, a fear of dependence, and a fear of being hurt. What about the sons growing up in such an environment? They learn that love is a burden, that men must always bear the pain of others, and that silence is the only way to avoid trouble. And so, when they come of age, they become numbed men, not because they lack emotions, but because their emotions were never safe to express. As a result, a generation of youth has lost faith in love, even before truly experiencing it. Conversations become shallow, relationships turn into transactions, and marriage is seen as a failed contract waiting to be renegotiated. People learn to control rather than love, to defend rather than share. The world grows crowded, yet isolated, connected yet distant. Ironically, while everyone talks about healing, very few dare to take responsibility for their wounds. Society encourages sharing, exposing, and being honest with emotions, but it doesn't teach how to bear the consequences of those emotions. People say, "Be yourself," but they don't say, "Be the better version of yourself." And from this, we witness a generation of outwardly confident people, yet empty inside, using self-love quotes to mask loneliness, using healing posts to avoid real change. Social media platforms, instead of being places of empathy, become factories for mass-produced pain, where everyone shares their suffering. But no one asks, how do we stop suffering? Alan Watts warns that the spread of generational emotional debt is the most dangerous. Because when a child grows up in an environment of distrust and disconnection, it will unconsciously recreate this same pattern in the future. And so, this generation teaches the next to love with suspicion, to live with defense, and to exist in isolation. If no one stops to take responsibility, to pay their debt, this cycle of pain will never end. No therapy, no #self-love will erase the consequences. Only when someone dares to look in the mirror and say, "I will not pass this pain on to anyone else," will the true journey of healing begin. Not only for them, but for an entire generation lost in the chaos of emotions called freedom. In the end, every story reaches an irreversible point. When the mask falls, only the truth remains. And the truth, as Alan Watts asserts, is not gentle. It is the cold mirror reflecting a generation of women carrying too much emotional debt, but expecting others to pay it off for them. And men, once silent sufferers, have now awakened. They begin to realize that love is not an obligation. Empathy does not mean unconditional sacrifice. And saying no to toxicity is not selfish. It is an act of self-respect. Alan Watts likens this change to a silent revolution. No banners, no movements, just millions of ordinary men starting to choose to leave rather than endure. They no longer participate in the game of saving others to prove their own worth. And they no longer seek women who only talk about their pain without taking responsibility for it. They don't need to be the healing hero, for they understand that someone who refuses to heal themselves will drag both down. And while many women panic asking, why are there no good men left? The answer lies right in the mirror. Because they demanded too much while giving too little. The emotional market, as Alan Watts says, is self-regulating. When the truth is exposed, virtual value no longer holds high regard. Those who once relied on beauty, allure, or the card of "I've been hurt" to demand love now realize the emotional market does not accept debt forever. It's time to pay. This awakening is not just for men. It's also a wake-up call for women. Because this video, though harsh in tone, is not a condemnation, it is a warning. It says, if you do not take responsibility for your emotions, you will lose the right to be loved. If you use pain as a tool, you will soon become a prisoner of that very emotion. And if you do not learn to pay your own emotional debts, you will always live in the fear of being abandoned. On the other hand, women who know how to stop, who face themselves, who embrace silence to truly heal, they are the rare light in this era. They don't flaunt their wounds, they process them. They don't demand to be loved, they learn how to love healthily. And they are the ones restoring the true meaning of love, a place where no one carries another's debt, where emotions are built on responsibility, gratitude, and honesty. Alan Watts concludes, the mask has fallen, the game is over. That women can no longer hide behind the elegant language of healing, self-love, or empowerment if their actions betray those very things. Men can no longer pretend they do not see the truth, for now, it is right before their eyes, in every post, every video, every public lament. And so, the veil of illusion closes, revealing a simple truth. Those who take responsibility for themselves will find peace. Those who seek to blame will forever be trapped in emotional debt. The awakening is not the triumph of men or the failure of women. It is the rebalancing of humanity. A new generation is learning how to love, how to take responsibility, and most importantly, how to face the truth without fear. For only when we dare to take off the mask can true love have the chance to exist.